Stay tuned for the Joan Quinn Profiles. As an editor for Andy Warhol's Interview, the Los Angeles Herald-Examiner, LA Style, and Detour magazines, Joan covered the social set, the Hollywood hotshots, the international art scene, the mysteries of food, the excitement of travel, and the fabulous world of fashion. Joan continues to find creative people on the cutting edge who make things happen. Here's Joan Agajanian Quinn.
Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome to the Joan Quinn Profiles. Waiting to be profiled is dramaturg and producer Susan Merson and chef David Fouts. We have multi-hyphenate Susan Merson, who is an actress, playwright, dramaturg, and producer. Susan was 17 years in New York, where she appeared on and off Broadway. And Susan, you were in some fabulous plays, Children of a Lesser God, yes. Zeffirelli's Sunday, Monday.
Sunday, Monday, part of the week, right. It was all the
Saturday, same. Vanities.
Yes.
Why did you come back to L.A.?
Well, I came
come to L.A.?
Well, because the government changed and there was no support for the arts in New York after a while. I came in the early 80s, which were the Reagan years, where the subsidy for the arts was considerably cut. And I had done a lot of developmental work as a playwright and as an actress who worked with new plays for a long time. And so the work really changed. It really dried up there for a while.
You didn't actually then come to be in films and do TV work?
I did do that because that was the only reasonable place to come. So I decided to come out here and see what was happening in television and film, and I've done pretty well.
You talked about developing things, but the plays that you were in on and off Broadway were not developmental type things. I mean, they were major...
big official things, very official.
Good.
But Vanities was a piece that was developed in the Lion Theater Company, and Kathy Bates and Jane Galloway and I were part of the process of developing that play. We were the original company.
So you were working as part of doing that. One other thing that you got an award for was Sherry Glazer's Family Secrets.
Right.
And how is it? She wrote it?
She wrote it and was produced.
But then you acted in it?
She was touring it around quite a bit. And
she did it?
She originally did the play.
I see.
And then she needed, there was a couple places where she wanted to do it, and she was just too tired, and she said, can I find, Susan, will you do this for me? And so I did.
But how does it feel? She wrote it as an autobiographical one-person play.
Right.
And then you step into it. How do you relate to what she's written?
Well, what happens is it then becomes mine. I then take the characters and make them relate to me. But Sherry's piece is are 5 characters, so you just as opposed to a story. Whereas some of the other pieces, like my first piece, China Doll, is a family story. But
your own story.
Yeah.
Was this Sherry's story?
She says that some of these stories were her own.
I see. So it was a different type of thing where you could actually take them over.
Yeah, because they were characters rather than.
I see. That's what I wondered, because I think it's hard when someone's written something about their own life, right? And then someone else stars in it.
Yes. Well, it is what you do as an actor. So you just give it the old actors as they say.
Was that the beginning of your interest in women's theater?
Well, I've always been interested in a woman's voice, and I grew up in the theater just at the time that Wendy Wasserstein was coming up, and those women were beginning to become prominent as playwrights, and I worked early in the solo field. I was one of the first people to develop solo pieces for myself in the early 70s.
You did. Tell us what you did. Clarice Cohen?
My first piece was a piece called Reflections of a China Doll that was done at the Ensemble Studio Theater in New York, and then toured for 5 years.
And tell us just a little bit about it so I can get some background of what.
That was a biographical piece, an autobiographical piece about growing up, a coming-of-age story. And then I've developed several others over the years. I did a Grace Paley piece, my favorite writer of all times, that we did at the Jewish Rep. I did a piece called Picnic in Eden, which was a bunch of short pieces put together, and that was toured.
When you said you did it, you were acting in it and you wrote them. as well.
Right, and then the most recent solo piece I've done is Clarice Cohen's Tribal Tales of Love.
That's what I was interested in, because Clarice Cohen isn't you.
No, well, she's my alter ego, perhaps. she's a born-again chanteuse, a 60-something born-again chanteuse. I was very interested in the idea of women who perhaps are past their commercial prime, still finding a way to, get their souls out there. And this is a woman who decides that she's going to be a singer at age 65, and she has a great romance with this guy, and it's a whole long story.
Do you sing?
I do. I do.
Did you sing on stage?
I did. I got to sing a version of Fever. It was very hot.
Did you sing as well as Miss Cohen would have sung?
Oh, yes, indeed. Well, of course, you have to understand that Clarice tours only to, residential assisted living places or community centers.
Does it?
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting.
That's the character. The character goes. That's how she makes her career.
I see. That's the character does that.
Yeah,
so she doesn't have to be so fabulous, does she?
Well, she wears jewels wherever she goes, and she's very fabulous. And for her, it's Broadway, God bless her.
That's very good. That's very good.
So that played in L.A.
You did also something that played in L.A., Hair Pieces.
Yes. Well, I helped to produce, and I wrote one of the pieces for Hair Pieces that I'm been involved for about 5 years now with the Jewish Women's Theater Project. And we develop a work written by contemporary American Jewish women. And also...
Do they have to be Jewish themes as well?
Well, yes, but,
just the idea that they're written by Jewish women is enough?
Yeah, it's basically, yes, we're exploring Jewish themes, but we're exploring the voices of Jewish women. And the voices of Jewish women are integrated and assimilated into this country.
Well, that's what I would think, that they have all different kinds of voices. They're not just specifically to a Jewish content.
Right. I mean, the whole point of being in America in 2000 is we are part of a melting pot, and that's what Hairpiece was about. We had black writers and Latino writers, and every flavor.
So there were 4 or 5 pieces.
There were 9 plays.
Oh, there were.
They were all one acts, and they were all about women and hair. We had a great time.
But one of yours was in it. Yes. One of your pieces was, even though you produced it, one of your pieces was in it, and it was what, Hair Tales?
Yeah, hair.
Oh,
just hair. A reminiscence. It was called Hair, a Reminiscence, about a woman who discovers who remembers the night that she went to see Hair in the 70s. And,
is that what it is?
Yeah, and how her daughter had left home at that time, and how they have a reunion. It's a very short little sweet piece.
Oh, I see. The other thing that we're going to go back to the Jewish Women's Theater, because I think it's a really interesting concept. They hold salons and you do readings. But before we get there, I want to just talk about one more step in the way you've developed your career, is the Barbra Streisand Festival.
Right.
And you did that for you were the artistic director for many years.
I came out, when I came out from New York, I was asked to develop a theater project with Jewish playwrights and with Jewish themes. And the Streisand Center had been developed at UCLA, Hillel, and Chaim Seidler-Feller, who was the man who ran it, asked me to develop this project. And we ran for about 6 years, and we did stage readings of new plays with Jewish themes. This was men and women.
But this was actually where, in a theater?
We toured. We used to do them. We would do one venue in L.A. I eventually went to L.A., Palm Springs, and San Diego.
And was it just always readings?
Yes, it was always readings. It was primarily a developmental reading program. That's what we were after.
And was it funded by Barbra Streisand?
It was funded by the Streisand Center. Actually, her brother, Sheldon, gave us our original grant.
Is that right?
To do that.
And then do they continue doing grants, or can you get grants from other places because of...
No, actually, that aspect of the center is no longer running. The Streisand Foundation is something very different and really had nothing to do with our work.
I see. But it was, in a way, what you're doing for the Jewish Women's Theater.
Yes, it's very similar. So that was when Jan Lewis approached me and told me she was developing this theater company, I said, I'll be happy to help, do whatever I can. And so I became very active.
She's very talented.
Yes,
and
indeed.
She has a great eye, Jan Lewis.
Yeah.
So it was great that she found you.
Well, we worked together as partners for specifically for about 4 or 5 years, and now I'm just on the board, which is even better.
But so then they commissioned you to do a piece called What Remains.
Correct.
Which seems like a treacherous kind of not even situation, but subject.
Yeah, it's a very, very touchy subject. It's about the murder of, it's based on the actual murder of Rabbi Adler, Morris Adler, in Detroit, Michigan in 1966.
Oh, and you're from Detroit.
Yes, my mother was there
Were you a part
that
of
day.
it? Is that right?
My mother was there, and the gentleman the young man who shot the rabbi was a brother of a friend of mine.
Ah, oh, he
So,
was.
Yeah. So it really, takes us back to that time, and it re-examines that 35 years later and says, what remains after a tragedy? How are we changed? What do we hold on to? What do we let go of? What's important to remember to keep?
But you can do that because you're so close, obviously, to that subject.
Well,
probably was easier for you than some other playwright coming in. People trusted you,
well,
or you could observe their feelings.
Well, it's based on. No, it's not.
Right.
This is not actual. But it's my response.
But you're going to get those same feelings, even if it's based on that, aren't you?
Yeah, but in terms of, I will never say that I am actually writing Rabbi Adler or writing these actual characters.
I see.
These are based on my reactions to the situation and how a family might react in that situation.
And you take it to the Jewish theater, to the project. Tell me again what it's called. Jewish Women's
Theater Project
and
commissioned it. And then it was part of our Salon series. And we did several performances at various homes around Los Angeles, which is the way that we're deciding to do our projects now.
So do you just go into someone's living room and put up 2 stools or 3 stools and just read?
Yes, it's wonderful.
And do people just sit all around?
Everybody sits around. We had a fabulous cast to do it, just a first-class cast. And we all sat around and we read this. We rehearsed it, and read it as a stage reading, kind of like radio theater. And afterwards, we had an opportunity to really talk about the play and talk about the issues that it raised.
Does it help you? Would you rewrite things depending on how the audience reacted to it?
For this particular play, because it was new, I did do that. And we had, I think, 4 performances at this stage, and every time I did a rewrite. So
how do they feel? I mean, I know you do it in a private home, and the public is invited to come and be a part of it. Is it a little bit scary in a way? I don't know, having an audience come into, because they're so close, that's true too, that's very true. But having an audience that you don't know come into your home?
Well, I think,
security-wise is maybe what I'm talking about.
Right, we have to, we're a small group, and we have a subscription base of about 50 people that we know.
I see.
And yes, I think you have to be aware of that, but
that's an interesting point. If you have a subscription base, you do know the people.
These are not just people off the street.
That's what I wondered.
Oh, no. These are they subscribe to the series.
And
there were 3. Actually, we've got another one coming up in May. Rhonda Spinnick's play is going to be done.
I see. So we're going to come and go to one of those salons. I haven't been yet, but I think the idea is fabulous. And I thank Susan Merson for being with us.
Thank you.
And don't go away, because we'll be back with Chef David Fouts. Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome back. I'm with executive chef David Fouts, who was born in Los Angeles, graduated from Loyola High School, excuse me, David, and went south to San Diego to the United States International University. David's been called the master of progressive American cooking, and is currently a partner with Sean Murphy in TCB Catering, taking care of business catering. Your food reflects this multi-ethnic theme, and did you learn that at the university?
I learned it primarily from traveling around. I had the luxury of, when I was in San Diego, of not only working in the kitchens down there, but it was an international university, so they had campuses in Nairobi, in London, in Mexico City, in the Philippines.
So it really did add some kind of something to you.
It did, and it was primarily made up of students not from the U.S., but from outside the United States. About 90% of the student body was from outside of the United States.
But it wasn't a culinary academy, was it?
No, it was. No, it wasn't. It was a regular university. I had originally gone there to get my degree in international business.
Oh, I see. But probably hanging out with all these people from all over the world taught you to eat what they were eating.
Exactly, because the food on campus couldn't be the regular traditional American meat and potatoes. You had to please all the students that they had on campus, because if you didn't, they were very vocal about what they wanted to eat.
Is that right?
And so it was like every single lunch and dinner was something completely different. I mean, you would have, one time it would be Thai foods, and other times it would be Italian foods. And so, I mean, I saw a lot of basically Americanized versions of those dishes.
But you were close to, in San Diego, close to Mexico. Was that an influence too?
It was, because a lot of my friends were from Mexico, Mexico City to be exact. So they would get homesick and we'd go down there. And there's a lot of hidden gems in Mexico. And there's currently right now in Tijuana, they're undergoing a culinary transformation.
Is that right?
It's a fantastic place to go.
So are they drawing people from Southern California down to?
They are. There are a number of top restaurants. They're also drawing a lot of the talent from the San Diego area into the Tijuana area.
Oh, that's interesting. But you got your start with a Mexican family.
I got hired by a Mexican family. They were very wealthy, very influential people in Mexico, and they had houses all through Mexico in Cuernavaca, and then outside Mexico and France and in Paris they had a
you
house.
Traveled with them?
I got to travel all the way through Europe, from France through over to Germany, down through Italy, through all the way through the Mediterranean. For about 2 years, it was a nonstop. We were going from one country to another country.
Oh, wow. And you were cooking all the time?
Yeah, I mean, most of the time I was. Probably about 3 nights a week I was cooking. The other days of the weeks, they were either over at one of the embassies or they were doing some other type of socializing. And how I got so diverse in my cuisine is the hostess would literally show up with a picture and say, "This is what I'd like to have tonight."
Is that right?
Yeah, and so I was like...
From anywhere?
From anywhere. I mean, it could either be from a local newspaper, which the recipe didn't mean no good if it's in German,
right.
Or it would be from a magazine or from a book. And so it kind of threw me into where I had to do a lot of research and really go, out and around, because it's not easy finding like an Armenian market in the south of France. It's next to impossible. So it really helped me with my creativity a lot.
And and to call you American progressive chef means you've brought all these different things, like you've progressed, I guess, beyond, I don't know what kind of a title that is, but what it says to me is that you're way ahead of what we're doing now.
I think in the sense that I was lucky enough to get so many different influences, and I'm very open-minded into what you can do with the culinary rules. It's like America's a melting pot, and we have all these different influences. So like when someone says, like, I'm doing American cuisine, I'm doing this Pacific Rim cuisine. I mean, basically, I think American food is progressing to a point where you really can't classify it, because you have, for example, so many marinades that Americans are putting a little bit of soy sauce into it. Well, is that really fusion cuisine? No, it's just American cuisine progressing to where it is.
But it's all these little titles, isn't it? And now it's changed. I think maybe it's changing. You were a chef at Bamboo, at the Mondrian, at Gadsby's, at the Beach House. Were those all the same type of food? Were you cooking the same kind of food at those places?
No, it was completely different. Bamboo and Gatsby's, they were very similar. They each housed sushi bars inside the restaurant, and it was more dedicated to like that Asian influence. The Le Mondrian was the stereotypical California cuisine type restaurant, and the Beach House threw me another different angle because it was from, it was New England style cooking.
Oh, it was that New England Beach House type of thing, not a Hawaii beach house.
No, like New England, and then from there I helped Josie Labache open up Josie's restaurant.
Yes. And what was that?
That is very heavily influenced by game. There's boar, antelope, elk on the menu.
So did you know how to cook all those things?
I knew how to cook, well, not the elk, but like the boar and the antelope I've used before, kangaroo and so forth, because I had played around with that when I was out at Bamboo. And being an executive chef with very open-minded owners, I got to bring in a lot of product.
That's really interesting, because here you were in your own kitchen doing whatever that restaurant called for, which you could stand up to the, not stand up to the plate, but stand up to the stove and be able to do it all. And then you go into the catering business with Sean Murphy, whose family is also very involved in restaurants and food.
Exactly. I mean,
What's the difference? Here you are as a caterer. You're at somebody's house. You're not in your kitchen. What happens?
it's a lot more complicated than a restaurant. I mean, it's much more rewarding. I love it because there you have a lot more personal contact with the clients, which on one hand is a lot more stressful because when you're doing a dinner party for 12 people, if the hostess doesn't like it, she's 6 feet away and she's going to come back and tell you. So you really got to pay attention to detail, and you've really got to outperform yourself each time you step back in that household. And the logistics are a lot more difficult as well.
That's
because
what I'm worried
if for
about.
some reason on a 7-course meal you forget something, I can't go in the walk-in and say, there, ta-da. It just doesn't work that way.
Yeah, that's what I mean, especially if you're doing something in a tent, say, and there's nothing there. At least if you're in somebody's house, she might be able to give you the pepper that you forgot or something like that.
Exactly. And catering as well, you don't have the clout anymore as when you were at Bamboo and you were doing $3.5 million a year. I can't call my purveyor up and say, you got to bring this to me like I
they
used
could
to.
come over right away.
Now I've got purveyors calling me and say, well, we couldn't make it out there today with your fish. And I'm like,
Hello?
wait a minute, it's Saturday at 3 o'clock. What do you mean you're just going to make it?
So what happens?
That's when I either rely on my friendships with some of the other chefs in LA, where I can go ahead and borrow some other product, or I've got to jump in, I've got to send somebody out down to the fish market, either downtown Los Angeles or down in San Pedro. So it's a lot more complicated. You have to be a lot more organized.
It's a good thing you're a native Californian, because you know where to go.
Exactly.
You know just what to do and how to get it done. And also you've worked in so many places that you do have this structure of friendship. That's really an interesting thing. Working with Sean, what do the two of you do? I know you do the cooking. What does he do?
Sean handles the front of the house. When we go in to do an event.
Which is what he's always done, right?
Exactly.
He never was a chef.
No. He had worked in Belgium for a little bit in one of the Belgian restaurants. And what he primarily does is he takes care of the rentals. He makes sure that everything gets set up. He's the one that has a lot of the face-to-face contact with the clients. We'll initially walk in and for the first meeting, and we'll talk about the menu and the concept of the hostess. Correct. And then it's my job to deliver a menu that the hostess will be happy with, and then Sean takes it from there. He runs the show from there, while I concentrate on getting all the items that I need into prep and getting the food ready and organizing how I'm going to get the food from point A to point B.
Well, the one thing that you mentioned a little bit earlier is that your hostess then likes what you're doing or doesn't like what you're doing. Usually she likes what you're doing, and so you get that instant gratification. But when you're in a restaurant, you don't know how people are eating it or how they're reacting to it.
You don't, and it's in a restaurant. The waiters are the most likely to be the one to come back and say, the person said that they were unhappy with this for some other reason.
Tell you?
The waiter will tell me, but if it's a compliment, the waiter very rarely will take the time to come back to the kitchen.
Is that right?
Whereas with the hostess will come in and she'll be so appreciative. You did a great job.
Yeah.
And I mean, there have been times where I had a hostess. I got called out to the dinner table one time, and the hostess is looking at me, and she's looking at this tomato. And she, how could you do this? I'm like,
are you kidding in front of everybody?
I think she was doing it tongue-in-cheek as well, but we had these beautiful currant tomatoes. There were about 1,000 tomatoes per pound, so they're very tiny, and she was very frustrated she couldn't get them on their fork.
Oh, please.
So there's some quirky stuff like that.
That is very funny. Do you shop? Do you do all the shopping for when you're working in someone's home? I mean, when you're catering a party?
Yeah, I mean, usually I try to make the time to go to the farmer's market, especially if it's close to Wednesday, because the Santa Monica one is absolutely fantastic. If not, then what I'll do is I've got my produce company downtown that I'll drive down and look at it, because I don't have the luxury of, if they make a mistake in an order, to call them up and say, yep, you brought me the wrong mushrooms, you'll have to bring them out. Same with the fish company as well. I deal with a Japanese fish company, and sometimes there is a language barrier, and sometimes they just don't understand what I'm asking for. So it helps me if I go down and look and say, yeah, that's what I want, or that's the grade that I want. I know precisely what I'm looking for.
I don't want to run out of time, so I want to talk about some signature dishes.
This is a smoked chicken spring roll. It comes from the concept that a spring roll doesn't have to be a spring roll traditionally filled with shredded vegetables and pork or chicken or beef. You can have fun with it. This is filled with smoked chicken, goat cheese, oven-dried tomatoes, and spinach, which is a very untraditional filling.
And in the middle?
And in the middle, we paired this with a avocado and tomato salad. And around the outside, to complement the smoked chicken, we've got a cilantro mint sauce.
Ah.
As well.
That sounds really good. I have one. So this could be your appetizer.
Correct.
This be the appetizer?
This could be the appetizer. It also could be used as tray pass, where we slice the spring roll into 4 different pieces and serve a tray pass.
Then we should go to this one. Would this be the entree, or would this?
This would be the salad course. It's a crispy wonton skins with an Asian coleslaw. This is a loin of tuna, ahi tuna, that's been seared off. It's been coated in Dijon mustard, rolled in black peppercorn, seared, and then sliced. The dressing that we have on the outside is an herb oil that's been infused with balsamic syrup.
I see.
Okay.
That looks great. And then I'm going to hold this one.
This is a very traditional dish. A lot of times for entrees, people they don't want something really fancy or frou-frou. This is a leg of lamb that's been boneless, that's been coated with a garlic mustard crust. On the bottom, what we have is an artichoke and roasted potato hash. The carrots. These have been cooked with apricots, so that the sweetness will actually complement the lamb.
And they're barely cooked.
Yeah, I don't like, the Italians love to overcook their vegetables. I don't. I would much rather have them to be a little bit al dente, so that it contrasts the rest of the items on the dish.
Now we have everything that we were going to eat before, but one of your really signature items, and you became one of the 25 best chefs, was the Bananagasm. And we only have a minute left, so tell us what it is.
Basically, it's the same concept. You can put anything in a spring roll. It's a frozen banana dipped in chocolate, rolled in nuts, and then it's rolled as a spring roll and deep fried, served.
Rolled as a wonton in?
As a spring roll, and then we deep fry it, and we cut it on a bias, so it's piping hot on the outside, but still frozen on the inside. And then we serve it with a chocolate sauce. So we were serving this one time, and all of a sudden, somebody that was out at one of the tables started screaming, "Oh my God, oh my God." And it turned out that she was just going wild about the dessert.
Oh, you mean she loved it so much?
and that's why it's been on CNN. It was also used in conjunction with this. It was a sitcom.
It was?
Oh,
so they
Seinfeld. They use it as a offshoot for one of their closing ceremonies or the closing show, and it's been featured on the Travel Cafe. And it's a very simple dessert. It's almost kid-like, but it's absolutely just so basic and simplistic, but it's a fantastic dessert.
Well, you brought us so many different flavors today. It was great.
Well, I hope you enjoy them.
Thank you, David.
Thank you for having me on the show.
And good luck in your catering business, TCB.
Yeah, we're staying busy.
Good, I'm really glad. And thank you, all of you, for watching the Joan Quinn Profiles. Keep riding to 777 South Figueroa, 44th floor, and we'll see you next time. The Joan Quinn Profiles. That was great.
Thank you very much.